Good morning, friends. It's the second Sunday in Lent, the period of preparation before Easter. We have the colour purple, the colour for preparation, and the intent is control of speech. I think we can all think about and perhaps resonate with this concept of the control of speech in these controversial times that we have. Not only do we live in controversial times, and perhaps people from all ages have lived in controversial times, one of the significant differences that we have in our time is our news media, our electronic news media. We are able to share everything instantaneously with everybody. That is, for good or evil, we share everything with everybody instantaneously. And so this intent of control of speech, in this period of preparation now, the period of preparation as we move towards one of the most significant festivals of the Christian year, is really, really important. And the collect sets out something which is very interesting and worth just reflecting on. A God who unto man alone has given the power of speech wherewith to praise thee. So when we think about where we are in nature, and we might think about, we just call them sometimes the kingdoms of nature. So we talk about the material kingdom, the solids and all that sort of thing. And then we think about the plant kingdom, huge variety in the plant kingdom. And then we talk about the animal kingdom, huge variety again. And then we're in the next kingdom, the human kingdom. And we have attributes that are different from the other kingdoms, but the kingdoms have attributes that are common to us. So we are a mixture of everything, a mixture of everything. But one of the distinctive things in this fourth kingdom, the kingdom of men and women, is speech. We have speech. So yes, you can train a parrot to say hello and good morning and give me some crackers or whatever it is you want to do. You can train that, but animals don't speak in the sense that we speak. Yes, they make noises. Yes, they communicate, but not in the sense that we do with speech. So here is a recognition of this God-given gift, given the power of speech. And then the next line of this opening phrase is, wherewith to praise thee. This is a key in this whole idea of what are we going to do about this particular ability of speaking. The next line in the collect says, grant that our hearts may be so filled with love and wisdom that we may speak evil of no man, but evermore glorify thy holy name. So, in many ways, the whole essence of what I'm proposing to present before you today is captured in those 3 or 4 lines. Because if you ask yourself, well, how can I learn to control my speech? How can I learn to be not so quick in sort of saying negative things? How can I control my temper? All those things, it's actually just summarized in these 4 lines. Our hearts may be so filled with love and wisdom that we speak evil of no man. So we actually have the key there. We have to learn how to fill our hearts with love and wisdom. And that's really worth thinking about, and really worth learning what to do about it. The benefit is automatically the control of speech. But now in the Epistle and the Gospel, we have a little bit more detail. As we say in these days, we unpack it a little bit. We've got 4 lines of what we call the good oil, but now it's so concentrated, we've got to unpack it and see what we do about it. And so St. James is writing, if any man offendeth not in word, the same as a perfect man. So he's saying, show me someone who never offends anybody whenever he says something, and I'll show you a perfect person. And we've all got examples every day when we turn on the television or listen to the radio of words that offend. We know what this means. Absolutely we know. For every kind of beast and birds and of serpents and things in the sea has been tamed by mankind, but the tongue, it says, can no man tame. I would like to say, but the tongue is the project of the moment. It's a little member, it's a little part of our body. But what can it do in the evil side of things? And as the epistle says, as Matt read this morning, you can light a little fire with a little phrase, a little suggestion of somebody being negative, and whoomph, it spreads. When he was writing this particular, what we call the Epistle General of St. James, he was sending it off, and it would be carried by a person. And then it might be read out to a small group of Christians that would be reading this and sharing in the insights of the writer, St. James in this case, and that would be uplifting and they would be reminded. Now, we don't have that separation between what we say and what people hear about if we've got some access or we appear on some sort of social media. We know about this, don't we? We know about the so-called influencers. So now we've got examples, and we write this now in the 21st century. If you are an influencer and you say something negative and you are one person, you know what a fire that can release in the community. You know how unstable that can create a very volatile situation. Here in Australia we have bushfires, and they're very devastating. And in fact we're having bushfires even now, even after the cyclonic times that we've just experienced here on the East Coast. These bushfires often start with a small spark, perhaps from a lightning strike, perhaps from an electric spark, perhaps someone of evil intent. Just a small spark starts it. But in order to get that fire under control, it might take hundreds of people. It might take months of work from one spark, from one comment. One person's life can be destroyed. From one comment, one misguided comment, a person's life can be just absolutely transformed. This is what it's referred to here. It's such a small thing, the tongue, but we've got to be so mindful when we're talking and speaking, especially of others. And it goes on to say that, in fact, it's not in the passage, this particular passage here, but in the passage which this has been extracted from, it uses two analogies, very nice analogies. It says, when you're in a boat and the pilot is steering the boat might be very large, but the rudder is a relatively small part of the boat. And just by turning the rudder a little to the left, a little to the right, this very large craft can be sailed in the correct direction, or it can be sailed in the wrong direction. So I'm sure you can see what that analogy is between the rudder and our tongue. And similarly, the bridle in a horse's mouth. The gentlest of pressure on the bridle, and the horse goes to the left or the right, or stops, or goes faster. It's exactly the same. Just a very small influence in such a powerful thing as the tongue, with this God-given gift of speech. It can create all sorts of mayhem, and alternatively, it can create heaven. It can create heaven on earth. And then, in the Gospel, Jesus is speaking, and this passage comes from what we call the Sermon on the Mount. And he's just reminding everybody that we're awfully keen in pointing out the difficulties in the men and women around us, aren't we? He's just saying, listen, just before you start to say something about that person you think should change their way of doing things or change their behavior, just have a look at yourself. Jesus says, can you think about how you appear to other people? Can you think about what other people think about you and what you say? Jesus is reminding people that we are all mainly absolutely self-centered. We've got the orientation of looking at people from where we are. That's neither good nor bad. But then when we become self-centered, we forget about the fact that we have an influence on other people, just as they have an influence on us. And before we start correcting them in their lives, we should just think about a little bit about our lives. But then Jesus concludes this again, in closing the circle now between the collect and the end of the gospel. He says, a good man out of the good measure of his heart bringeth forth that which is good. And so now we have an absolute way of how to deal with this. And this is not theoretical or sort of too spiritual that no one can't do it or too hard to attempt. No, 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 no. This is absolutely practical, spiritual applications to daily life. And what is this I'm talking about? I'm talking about opening of the heart, softening of the heart, being mindful of speaking from the heart, and then no evil can, as they say, issue forth, can come forth. But that a man with an evil heart, all that comes out of that person's mouth is evil. So now we can see what a person is by the way the person speaks. This is very powerful, isn't it? So along with the gift of speech, along with the God-given gift of speech, comes, and this is really interesting, the instant ability of other people to work out what you are like, what I am like, when I open my mouth and speak. That's sobering and wonderful at the same time, isn't it? It's a pause for thought, and it's a pause for rejoicing. So think about this in our time for preparation now. Think about it as we're proceeding through Lent, and every Sunday we have a new intent, a new thing to think about, a new thing to add to our understanding, our spiritual understanding as we move on the path. Control of speech and everything that goes with it. That is, a loving heart, an intent to do good to our fellow men and women. And from that comes control of speech. Think on that through the week.